So I'm going to be velveting some of the beef this is the rump beef that was all separated when I packed up some bulk whole beef pieces a little while ago. So I have casserole cuts, which are a tougher cut of the rump, and I also have some of the medallion steak as well. So in total, I've got myself just over a kilo, 900 grams. And I need to velvet it because I'm not going to be spending hours and hours making casseroles during a hot part of the year. So instead, a really quick way to prepare the meat for really quick cooking is to velvet it. Alright, so that technique has been around forever. I imagine it's been around for much longer than I've been using it. I've been doing it since the 80s. In all of the Asian type of recipes, and so I continue to do it with beef, pork, chicken, and some seafoods like calamari, or when I'm doing some prawns as well. Alrighty, let's get on to it. So when you're velveting your meat, we're going to need to be cutting it really, really finely, and we're going to be cutting it against the grains of the meat. So the meat grain is running in this direction, like that. We need to go across that way. So there's two parts to velveting the meat. It's firstly the cut, and then also cutting it across on an angle through instead of straight down. If you cut straight down, it's still going to be tough. But if you cut it on an angle and slither the meat, that ensures that it's even more tender and breaks apart a lot easier as well. So I'll go ahead and continue to cut all of this into really fine, thin strips. So by laying your knife down on your board and just raising it up about 10 degrees and sliding the knife along your meat will get you those really fine strips. That's exactly what we're doing. I'm going to remove any of the fat pieces. Just continue to strip this all out. I'm going to use baking soda as the method that I'm going to use in this occurrence because I'm doing beef, so I find baking soda is a really, really good way to tenderize your meat really quickly, and especially the cuts of meat that are quite often tougher. Now, rump can be tough, especially if it's a very lean cut of rump, and this is very lean cut of rump. So it potentially could be, also if there's any connective tissue, like there was in that piece, because I'm now sort of getting into the casserole steak as well. So anything with connective tissue takes hours and hours to break down, whereas with velveting, it takes about 20 minutes to break it down instead. So after the velveting process has happened, so once we have added our baking soda, and there's a certain amount you add per kilo or half kilo, once we've added the baking soda, we'll prepare a marinade, which will become a sauce, and that'll be the final flavour that's added to the beef. It can be plain, you don't have to marinate afterwards or add a sauce, you can fry it off. Right, now we're into the casserole steak. So there's a lot of pieces of this. It's already been chopped up really finely, but a lot of connective tissue in this. So because of these really lots and lots of connective tissues, I'm just going to cut it as finely as I can. Some of the pieces have just got too much connective tissue. This has all been reserved from the top side part of the rump. So not any of the fillets or any of the medallions, or not the top cap or any of that. This is the other parts of the rump. So normally casserole is perfect. There's a little bit of fat in this section, but again with the velveting, that's okay. Alright, so I'm not even going to cut up any more of that casserole. It's been cut fine enough. So I'm going to put it all together. Like I said, I've weighed this and it's just over a kilo. And like I said, I'm going to be using the baking soda. So for a kilo, I'm going to need 2 teaspoons. So this is where you need to get your hands dirty, unless you want to wear gloves, okay? And it's perfectly fine to wear gloves. I'm just not going to. So I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of baking soda directly into my beef. To that, I'm going to start to add my water before I start massaging it in. So the baking soda changes the beef's absorption of liquid, and we want a highly absorbed amount of liquid in order to make our beef incredibly soft during the cooking stage. We are hydrating it, we're giving it a bath, we are marinating it in its own juices, we're giving it something to plump up, and you'll notice the change of colour hopefully as well. So at the moment this is us, standard beef type colour, okay, nothing special, until it starts to respond and you feel the texture of the meat start to change. It becomes very velvety, I suppose is the best word for it, because that's what we're doing. Okay, so as I'm massaging that through, only in that couple of seconds, that was a third of a cup of water. All of that water, once again, is gone. So, keep going. Going to add another third of a cup. Again, going to massage all of that through. You can clearly see there's plenty of water in there at the moment, in the bowl. Right, so we are going to massage that in. Give it time for the beef to absorb all of that and to plump up. And then once it's plumped up, and again, there's now no water. It's gone. So all that beef so far has absorbed. This is why if you were to buy, which is why you can't buy velveted beef prepared, because of the amount of water. So it's already just taken 2/3 of a cup of water. So that's a bit of weight getting added to the beef. So you could see why it would be potentially not allowed. Okay, here's my 1/3 a cup. All right, so that's now 1 cup of water that has been added to my 1 kilo of beef, plus my 2 teaspoons of bicarb, and that's it. Okay, so I'm just going to continue to massage that through until it also disappears, because I know it's going to. And then once all of that beef is absorbed, and that way the baking soda is fully dissolved and it's coating all of the pieces of meat the same, and they can now relax after their massage, which is what they're going to do. There's now no water in the bottom of the bowl. Once again, no water back there. All gone. Beef is absorbed all of it. So it's time for it to have a little bit of a cool break. Gonna let it rest. Had a massage, now it's time to rest. Into the refrigerator for about 20 minutes. So this is our beef now. Lovely and red and glossy. It does change the colour of the meat as well by just adding that baking soda to it. So it brightens it up because it's opening up all of the exterior of the meat, which has oxidized and changed colour, and now you're seeing this lovely fresh coloured beef. Alright, into the refrigerator, 30 minutes. Like I said, there is no water left in the bottom of the bowl. It's all been absorbed. A full cup has been absorbed in this 1 kilo of meat. So that tells you the level of how dry the meat potentially could have been when I cooked it. Now, however, it's going to be really nice and stay nice and plump and moist during the cooking process, because it's got all that moisture to protect it now when it gets cooked instead of drying out. Okay, so I've velveted the beef. It's in the refrigerator having a rest. Time to move on to the next part. Marinade. So I'm just going to prepare a simple marinade, which will then become a sauce for when I do cook up the beef. So I'm going to add about 1/3 of a cup of Shaoxin Chinese cooking oil. And I'm going to add about 1/2 cup of soy sauce. Couple of tablespoons of sesame oil. And then a teaspoon of ginger and garlic. So you can use fresh ginger or fresh garlic. I should go and get the fresh garlic. Let me go get the fresh garlic instead of the powder. So I'll use some fresh garlic. I prefer fresh garlic and ginger, but I have got all the ginger currently being fermented. So I'm just going to put in what would be probably 2 or 3 cloves of garlic. And ginger, I will be using the dried ginger powder instead of using a fresh ginger. Fresh ginger definitely would be better. But if I don't have it, this will still give me the same flavour profile. So a teaspoon of that. And then we just need some fresh honey. So a few good tablespoons of fresh honey. If you can get honey that's local, even better. If you don't, that's okay, as long as it's honey. There we go. And mix all that together, and that will become the marinade and the sauce. The only other ingredient that this is going to need will be some corn flour to thicken it during the cooking stage. But we are going to be frying off the beef first before we do the making of the sauce and then combining the two together. Okay, we'll come back when that's ready. Rightio, so I have the beef tallow, which is the beef fat that was all rendered down for about 5 or 6 hours. And I've ended up with this beef tallow, which is what we're going to be using to cook the beef in. So this is the velveted beef. I've rinsed it under the tap to remove all of the baking soda, which was on the outside of the meat, but it's all been velveted now for a good half an hour. So it's time to get the wok hot and get some of this tallow in. So if you don't have any of the beef tallow, just normal oil is fine. I just figured that since we're doing beef, we might as well use all of the beef. And this is what's been made from the beef fat trimmings from the rump beef. Now, the tallow can be pressure canned as well, but I'm just keeping it in the refrigerator in a sealed container. It's not a large enough quantity to, although I might do some. So this is just pure beef tallow. And if I do another batch and I've got more, then I might do a couple of smaller jars and put it onto the shelf, but I've got the space for it in the fridge at the moment. So we've got our tallow heating up at the moment, and we've got our beef and we've got our marinade. So let's get cooking. Okay, so the tallow is hot. I'm going to whack in some of the beef and get it coated in the oil and flash fry it. Making sure all the sides are covered. That's the key to doing the velveting when you're using oil, is ensuring that all of the beef is moving around the wok and that it's all well covered in the oil while you're cooking, or in this case, the tallow. And then we're going to cook it till it's about 80% cooked and then remove it. But really quick process. Just sears the beef on the outside, and then we'll finish the cooking process in the sauce when it's all finished. So that first batch is ready to come out. So much faster than stir fry, which would be 2 minutes or so, more like 30 seconds or so. Okay, first batch is done. Oil's heating up again. We'll put in the second batch. Got a very springy texture to it. And the meat just falls apart. And then finish off the last of the kilo of the meat. I'm doing this in 4 batches, so as not to overcrowd the pan, and to make sure that all of the pieces of meat are well covered in that beef tallow. Let's get a strainer, and then we'll just pour off the tallow, still leaving the flavour in the pan though, and we can get the marinade in there. So that's our beef. Let's take all this tallow and pour it off. I've got a strainer in this bowl as well. That'll help just collect any of the meat that is left over, as well as to separate anything from the tallow, because it can still be used again. Right, that's my pan. Needs to be just some of that removed. So I'm going to use a paper towel just to give it a quick, not completely clean it up. I still want it to be oily. I just don't want it to have any of the crispy parts in there. Okay, heat goes back up. Now we can make the sauce. I'll also need some water and some corn flour. And we've got our marinade here, which is now going to be our sauce because we don't need to marinate the velveted beef. I'm just going to put our sauce into the wok and heat that up. Once that's heated, it's lovely and warming through, we're going to add the beef back to it. Remembering this beef is 80% cooked, not 100% cooked. So it'll only take a moment to finish it off. So while that's happening, I will get the cornstarch organised. So here is my corn flour. And I'm going to need a couple of teaspoons of cornstarch. A little bit of water to make a slurry, which will then be used to thicken the sauce. Check on that. The smell in here is amazing. So we're just bringing all of that sauce up so it's nice and hot, coating all of the beef with it. Such a quick process. And then once that sauce is simmering nice and fast, so it's getting some temperature to it because there's honey in that, remember. I'm going to add my cornstarch. And I'm just going to keep stirring until it thickens. And that is simply it, done. And off the heat. And that's ready to be dished up. Get a clean bowl. So there we have our beef, all finished. So remember, this is casserole style steak that just pulls apart after just a couple of minutes of flash frying it once it's been velveted. So a really good way to use a technique when you're using cuts that normally would take hours upon hours to cook. Instead, 20 minutes of velveting with the baking soda, and then the meat just pulls apart and it's ready to go. All right, into the refrigerator, that can go for dinner tonight. Here is the tallow that's been used this time around. There is some sediment down the bottom, which is the vegetable juices of stock, so that will need to be poured off afterwards if I'm to reserve this. But the way it is there, it's not getting pressure canned or anything else. It's just going to go into the refrigerator and still be used for the next batch of cooking. So that's how we go about velveting our beef and making a really quick meal out of a more reduced value cut of beef.